To this Sell More with Sales Navigator webinar. If you're joining us, thank you so much for turning up on the beautiful weather. The sun's out. Well, it is where I am. And thank you for coming. If you are new to Sales Navigator and you're going, what the hell is that? You're going to be introduced to something that will blow your mind. If you're already using Sales Navigator, I'm going to show you some things that are going to actually move the needle for you, whether you're a salesperson or small business. And if you're maybe you're a pro at Sales Navigator, I'm going to show you some of the new features that are actually going to really shake up the way we do business. So buckle up, we're going to have a good time. It's interactive. I'm not going to bore you to death with PowerPoint. I want to dive into Sales Navigator, show you some of these features. And if you've never been to one of our webinars before, please relax. It's not going to be too aggressive. We're not going to go all QVC, but I do want to let you know before we start about a masterclass we're running on the 6th of July. It's a comprehensive training session for Sales Navigator. So we're on a limited 1 hour slot here. We're going to give you a whole load of things to think about and really some tactics you can play, but we're actually going to lay out the full strategy on this masterclass on the 6th of July. So in the chat, there will be links to go and check it out, go have a look, but we're going to walk you through and give you a systematic approach to connect and engage with prospects and move them onto calls. So that's what we're going to do on the Sales Navigator Masterclass on the 6th of July. Go check it out. If it's a fit for you, get booked in, join me live, interactive on Zoom, we'll do it. So tonight is kind of the appetizer of that, and we're going to show you some of the great things you can do with Sales Navigator. So I'll just get rid of the kind of basics to begin with. So for some people joining going, well, what is Sales Navigator? It's just a database, right? No. Sales Navigator has been pigeonholed into this, oh, it's just a lookup tool, it's a directory. It's not. Sales Navigator is an intelligence tool. It's first-party data, which is something no other platform can boast. No other business platform, data platform can boast. It's first-party data. It's real time. That's even better. But more importantly, it can show you what's going on with those businesses. It can help you understand, not just, oh yeah, we work with cybersecurity companies in EMEA. No. It will help you understand where the best opportunities are in those cybersecurity companies. So it's not just about finding people, it's about finding the best people. And it will also help you understand some of the paths in and approaches you can make that are more likely to get a response. So Sales Navigator, incredibly powerful tool. If you use it right, and if you use it as part of your sales process. I recently was working with a company, and their whole sales team had Sales Navigator, and they were using email, phone calls, and Sales Navigator, and they didn't join them up. And what was happening was some people were hammering prospects on LinkedIn, some people were making calls, some people were doing email, and the ones that didn't work on those systems, they would switch to LinkedIn. And they were wondering why they weren't getting the success, they weren't getting the results. It was because they were just annoying people. And what Sales Navigator allows you to do, if you're a salesperson watching this, listen up, this is important. Instead of playing a volume game, and there has been this myth that sales is a volume game. It is a numbers game, but it's not a volume game. For many years, it was about hit as many prospects up as you can and something will drop out the bottom. Those days are over. Those days are coming to an end if they haven't already ended, because prospects are now wise to these automated approaches. They're tuned into the fact that people are just paying no attention. They're just machine gunning pitches out there. So the sales landscape, selling in all formats, phone, email, on LinkedIn, is harder today because of poor practice yesterday and last year and the year before. We can spot automated messages, we can spot all of that stuff. So Sales Navigator allows us to look inside a person's business or a prospect's business, understand it better so that we can actually create a more meaningful conversation. We can actually open it in a more authentic way, but also a more relevant way, and that gets us better responses and gets us better opportunities as a result. So if you've been approaching LinkedIn as I found a directory and now I just hammer the directory, that's not the right approach. That for some reason, sales and marketing is aligning more, but actually what sales teams are doing is doing more of a marketing approach, one-to-many, when sales should be one-to-one. It should be a building relationship with a specific company, specific prospects and their stakeholders. And what we've done is we've shifted sales to one-to-many. In other words, pitch a load of people, pick up whatever drops out, if anything drops out. So Sales Navigator allows us to change that. Now, a lot of people get tongue-tied with how to use it and what to do with it. And I've got a worksheet that you can have. If you drop us an email, we'll put our email address on screen below. So I don't want you to put your email address in the chat. Please don't do that because we won't see it. I want you to send me an email. So write an email to me, hi@maverick.io, and say, Dean, can I have the Sales Navigator worksheet? And we'll send you a template guide, an activity sheet that you can use to actually prospect on LinkedIn. It's totally free. Drop us an email, hi@maverick.io. Don't put your email address in the chat. Send me an email and say, can you send me the activity sheet? Now, as we're live, the UK office is closed. So at the time, if you send it now, what will happen is tomorrow morning, they'll send you the PDF activity planner. So Sales Navigator is about intelligence. It's about understanding the key components of why people buy. So I'm going to run you through some features, but then I'm going to talk to you about white space. And we're going to devote quite a bit of time to what I call white space. Now, white space is something that you're going to really find interesting, but it's going to challenge you to actually really understand who you're selling to and why. But we'll come to that a little bit later. So on Sales Navigator, just pull up my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen there. So on Sales Navigator, when you load up, the first thing that you see is this home feed. Most people don't know how to use this home feed. They don't know what it's for, why they need to use it. And I'm going to give you kind of an overview of why it's important now, but on the masterclass on the 6th of July, we'll go into this in major detail. So as you can see on your screen, you've got a home feed. One of the biggest things that will mess up your prospecting success is basically you wasting time. Yeah, you will absolutely waste time. LinkedIn is designed to help you waste time. So Sales Navigator's home feed will basically populate with all of the leads, all of the prospects that you want to build relationships with. All of their activity will populate into this home feed. So what you want to be doing is saving relevant people into your lead lists on Sales Navigator, and then all of their activity populates there. It's very, very important you do this, because if you start using LinkedIn.com, the normal LinkedIn site, and start looking through, you will get sucked into all sorts of irrelevant stuff, people commenting on random things, you seeing stuff in your feed. You'll get sucked into all sorts of stuff. And before you know it, 2.5 hours is gone. So you want to be using the Sales Navigator home feed, because that's where all of the things that you should be engaging with, you should be putting your time on, are contained. So that's number one. The home feed is to stop you getting the time suck on normal LinkedIn. So we want to fill that feed with the right people. So how do we do that? Well, we have lead filters. Now, lead filters are essentially a way to live search LinkedIn's database of users. So you can look through and find the people you want to connect with, engage with, and ultimately become a client, become a customer. And so there's a ton of features in here. Company headcount, depending on which version of Sales Navigator you've got, you might have less or more of these features. I have advanced, highly recommend it. But the first thing is the company headcount. Now, this is actually one of the most common fields that I use. And I use it because in many cases, it will help me understand the size of the organization, help me put the organization in some context. Sometimes people use the revenue filter on the account search, but I find it's not very accurate and it's not widely used across all companies. So company headcount is brilliant for helping to understand who are the key players. So if I go, right, to show me all of the people who work for a company with 10,000 employees or more, 10,000 employees or more. So there's 87 million people. Just under 10% of all of the LinkedIn user base work for the largest companies on the planet. Just under 10%. So 91%, something like that, actually work for companies smaller. And as you can see down here, you can see that basically, as we look, 6 million are classed as self-employed on there. It just means how they've set themselves up. 1 to 10, 34 million plus. 11 to 50, 44 million. 51 to 240 million. So you can see how it breaks down. There's loads of different groups. Now, of course, there are some people not classified at all. Not classified at all. Because that doesn't add up to 930 million people. So one of the things that's a bit tricky is that you'll find that a lot of people are not categorized. So we use this, but if you're trying to get the most accurate results, we'll do an account search, which we'll come to in a moment. But the lead filters gives you a quick snapshot you can look through. You can search by job titles and find people. So I'm just going to quickly do a search, and I found a load of second degrees. Now, what do I do when I found these second degrees? Well, if they're relevant to me, if they're the right people, I'm going to save them. And I hit the save. And when I hit the save, I can choose lists. So you can have a list of prospects and you can define them. So you could have, for an example, a list of CEOs, a list of regions. You can define the list however you want. If you're new to Sales Navigator, if you're relatively inexperienced with Sales Navigator, let me give you a couple of recommendations. Number one, before you start to use it seriously, make sure you've removed all of the leads that you've used before. So if there's people are relevant to you now and you've saved them, but you've never cleaned them up, get rid of them. Clean it up so that LinkedIn can be more accurate. You do not want to get your home feed clogged up with irrelevant people. So what you want to do is save, if you're a newbie, around 200 people into that lead list, so that way they pop up on the home feed and you can engage with them and interact with them. So do the searches. Again, we're going to go into detail in the masterclass on the 6th of July on the actual searches and ways you can do it. I'm going to show you some of the white space in a moment. Do the search and save the people, up to 200 if you're a newbie. I've got about 1,100 in there, but you have to be really organized if you start putting big numbers into your sales nav, because, and I'll come to this, it's not about one interaction with a prospect. The average now is that you need to have 8 touch points with a prospect. 8 touch points. And that's not eight touch points over 5 years. That's 8 touch points over a few months, if that. So if you're not organized or you overload yourself on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, what will happen is you'll have a touch point with somebody and then you'll never get back round to them for months because you'll forget about them. They'll get lost in the system. You won't be able to keep up. And so you'll end up where actually you've done a lot of touch points and you've created a very, very shallow touch point with lots of people, when what we really want to do is build a pattern of touch points with a group of people that we can actually move off the platform onto a discovery call. But it takes 8 touch points. Now, of course, some of those touch points, if you're a small business or you're targeting small business owners, you might not need as many as 8. But if you're targeting CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, you're going to probably need more than 8 touch points. Why? Because they're very busy. They're not always on the platform. They may be a bit more, well, they will be more well-trained to resist responding to people's outreach. So you've got to think about that from their perspective. There is a potential that they're going to be tougher nuts to crack. So it's going to take more work with the more seniors and maybe a little less work with some of the more small businesses or employees within businesses. So just factor those things in. So if you overload yourself, you will not be able to build up that pattern of building the trust, building the relationships, and all of those things. So save a maximum of 200, and I'll give you some tips here for an easy win. When you do your search on Sales Navigator, down at the bottom, I'll just pull it up here, down at the bottom, you've got spotlights. Now in the spotlight section, you can actually look for the people who've changed jobs in the last 90 days, which means they've updated their LinkedIn profile. It also means if they've changed their jobs, they might be bringing a new approach, so there might be an opportunity there. 5,000 have been mentioned in the news, so in other words, they've had a press release where they've been mentioned in some way, a news story, and 1 million there have been posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. So I would encourage you, not exclusively do this, but I would target people who are more active on the platform because that will give you more success in the short term because they're more active on the platform. The people who are less active on the platform, maybe they don't post, maybe they're what we call lurkers, they're the people where you might have to invest more time and actually do some more work over a period, and you're probably going to have to mix your engagement with them, not just on LinkedIn, but bringing email and phone into an order and a process. And I'm going to cover that before we wrap up. So in the lead search, as you're searching for those leads, try and target the people who've been on the platform in the last month. This is not a perfect filter because, of course, if people haven't posted, it doesn't mean they're not active. They might be liking and commenting on other people's stuff, but they've just not posted themselves. But I encourage you to focus on the people who've posted as a priority because they're going to be easier to get through the process. And I'm going to show you the process. I'll explain the process. So doing that lead search, saving those prospects, they go into the home feed. Now you've got the home feed full of interesting people who potentially you could do business with. So that's really, really important. But you've probably noticed that I've got a whole new filters that maybe you've never seen before. One of them is account has buyer intent. Now this buyer intent piece is relatively new to LinkedIn in the sense of as a feature we can access, but it's been known to LinkedIn for a long time how users behave. They know what we click on, they know what we do, they know what websites we visit, they know what company pages we visit, they know all of this stuff. And of course, more and more buyers are researching, doing their own research before they engage with a company. So it used to be people would make an inquiry and then they'd weigh it up. Now what happens is people actually weigh it up first before they make an inquiry. So they're further on their buying journey before we even know they exist. So LinkedIn studied this, understands this. They know the part that LinkedIn plays in people's research. They know if they're checking us out, they know if they're checking our company page out, they know all of this stuff. And what they've done is they've worked out a way to score the people who are in buying mode or research mode versus people who are just exploring and being nosy. And so LinkedIn allows you to basically search and filter the leads by their buying intent. So I can see here, the account has buyer intent, and it's now showed me, it's whittled that list down from 4 million results to 180,000 results. Now, of course, this is individuals who work for a company who's showing buying intent. It's not that these specific people are show buying intent. But if I'm working in a particular vertical, I have a common decision maker, it's obvious that the right people are going to be showing up here as I start to filter the decision makers. So the buying intent is a new feature, and from a sales point of view, you shouldn't ignore it. But likewise, because somebody's exhibiting buying intent does not mean it's a slam dunk. It just means it's a warmer or more interesting, potentially, opportunity to pursue. It doesn't mean it's a slam dunk sale. But when people are exhibiting buying intent, you should be talking to them. You should be interacting with them. You should be engaging with them. And the conversion rate of people who are exhibiting buyer intent on the platform is higher than if you ignored it. So if you are a salesperson or you are a small business and you're looking for how do I devote my time on LinkedIn, I would be focused on the ones who are exhibiting buying intent. Now, I'll come to, we've got loads of questions people will ask about how does it work? What if I've got no buying intent? How do I facilitate it? There's a ton of questions and probably too many to answer today. But what I would encourage you is to go, well, hang on a minute. For somebody to be exhibiting buying intent, they need to know we exist. They need to be aware of us. They need to have seen us. They need to know what we do. They need to know what our value is, the value we bring is. So there's a whole piece separate to Sales Navigator in almost the demand generation part of LinkedIn that we're not going to cover today that actually helps bring that buyer intent up to the boil. And that's an important part of what you're doing on LinkedIn. So if you're marketing and sales here and you don't have a demand gen strategy for LinkedIn, an organic demand gen strategy for LinkedIn, you should, because without it, your buying intent scores won't work so well and you won't find the people who are already actively exploring. So in the search, you can actually do buyer intent and filter by the company's buying intent to see leads at those companies. Category interest below, and I can't cover every filter today, but I'm going to cover some interesting ones for you. Category interest is where they note that people are paying attention to different softwares and platforms. So I know that companies that have got buyer intent and are paying attention to sales training software, and it gives me a list of 79 individuals. So this is really interesting now because I've got some companies who've got buying intent but are also looking at sales training software. So this might not work for every company. The category interest is growing, but if I look at manufacturing execution systems, so what we're looking for is any kind of software that fits into where our world is. So if we're making something, if we're selling services, is there a software that would tally in? Because that can help us find people who are more open to a conversation. So you can see quite quickly, I can find key players, key decision makers, and score them. So I could save them into my home feed. I'll come to what you do with them once they're in the home feed. Now, one of the concepts you may or may not be aware of is something what we call white space. Now, white space is something where, how can I put it? It's where there's more lucrative opportunities. So let's say you serve this market, this imaginary box that I'm shaping here. you serve this market. It may well be that there's this portion of the market in this little corner over here that's actually more lucrative for you. That's white space, where there's scope for very great, good business and good business over the long term. So when you're prospecting, you should be looking for not just where can we make a sale, but where can we build a business relationship? And that's what the white space is. So when I'm looking at white space, and this is really important from an economic point of view, we know how tough it is right now. We know it's very difficult economic environment. Despite there's no official recession, it's lingering. There's this downbeat mood. Their budgets are under pressure. People are cutting costs. People are laying people off. It's not a nice environment to try and be selling into. We've had 12 years of really good times where it's actually been really not easy, but it's been easier to sell. And then we've had all of the things that have gone on over the last 3 years that have inflation, depressed markets, all of that stuff's going on. And we've basically got a recession, but it's masked. It's not an official recession by the definition. So the white space is looking for those opportunities despite where the market is. And so, for an example, the tech sector has been absolutely hammered. So we know that the tech sector is cutting costs, cutting headcount, reducing spend. All of those things are going on in the tech sector. But that's not happening to the whole tech sector, but it's happening to a lot of the tech sector. So one of the things we can do with our account searches is find companies where there is white space. There's opportunity for growth. We can get some bellwether signs that they're spending money, that there's they're not in the same position as the rest of the market. And I've talked to a lot of salespeople when we do our sales training, when we do our LinkedIn masterclasses for small businesses. They all say it's tough. It's tough, and I said it is, but it's not tough everywhere. So we need to find the places where it isn't tough. Even in the tech sector, there are companies that are prospering right now, that are doing the opposite of the bigger companies where they're laying off thousands of people. There are companies that are prospering in this, and LinkedIn helps us find them and find opportunities where there's more white space. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some. So when you go into account search, you get a whole load of other filters. And again, this is brilliant. So one of the first ways you can find the simplest white space you can find, you go into spotlights, job opportunities, and it will show you companies that are hiring on LinkedIn. So here we are. I've just done a simple search by buyer intent. They've got moderate or high buying intent, and they're hiring on LinkedIn. And these are the companies that come up. Really simple, yeah? 344 companies. But let's just strip out the buyer intent for a moment and go, how many companies are hiring on LinkedIn? 640,000 companies are hiring on LinkedIn. So immediately, if some companies are hiring, they've not put a hiring freeze in place. They're still filling roles. We can also look at, okay, let's have a look at, are they growing or are they contracting? So let's look at companies where they've had at least a 5% headcount growth up to, I don't know, 100%, which is ridiculous numbers, but we'll have a look. So companies that are hiring and have been growing rapidly, yes, there we go. 300,000 companies meet that criteria. 300,000 companies. Okay, let's say for an example, I provide marketing services, marketing agency services, right? What's another white space filter I can look for? Well, actually, let's just go down. I'm just doing this without a mouse, so bear with me. I can see all the filters, and I can see, hang on a minute, a department headcount. So let's have a look at the marketing department. And there's a couple of different ways I can use this. I could look for companies where there's a small marketing department. Why would I want to do that? Because if they have a small marketing team, it means a lot of it might be outsourced. So these big companies that have grown massively, they're hiring on LinkedIn, but they've only got 3 to 10 marketing department people. So there's 54,000 of them. And then I go, okay, let's look at some of the bigger companies in the world, but not the huge companies. Let's just go like SME-ish. So I'll take the middle bands here, right? And immediately 35,000 companies on LinkedIn are hiring. They've experienced rapid or at least 5% headcount growth. So they've at least added 3 or 4 people at the lower end, but at the higher end, they might have been adding 40, 50 people. They've got a small marketing department, but they're growing and they're hiring. 35,000 companies. This is what I call white space. If you just search for companies that, in certain industries, what you're doing is basically just trying to find it like a directory. Whereas if I start to put in the technology categories now, so just put them more in. Computer software, we'll put that one in. They don't have like a SaaS, but even we'll go to cybersecurity, computer and network security. So there's 4,500 companies in a technology-centric sector that is actually growing. It's actually growing, rapidly growing. And if I wanted to be more clear, actually just knock out the smaller end, there's still 1,000 companies where they've experienced in the last 12 months, I'm just trying to do the maths here, they've hired at least 10 people, at least, and probably more than that. They've probably between 10 and basically 50 people. Between 10 and 50 people they've hired, and they're hiring right now. So that tells you that if they're hiring right now, they've got budget to hire. It tells you that they're filling roles. Now, it could mean that there's churn, of course, but they're net growing. So what do I do with these companies? Well, save them. So they appear in the feed. Go and look in the companies. So if I look at Naughty Dog here, 836 employees, go and find my decision makers, go and search through their employees, save them. Build that home feed full of the people who can do business with you. And white space is simply using filters that indicate they have budget in some way, they're growing, they're defying our perception of where the economy is. Find those companies. Find the companies where maybe there's small departments, or find where a department's growing. In the account searches, you can actually search by companies where their departments are growing. So for an example, I can come down here and filter by the department headcount growth and find marketing again and go, actually, they've increased their marketing department by up to 200%. Now, I don't know whether you need to work out these for yourself, what works for your business and your target audience. But what I'm going to do is say, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to change this category to say, instead of having just 3, they have more than 50 to 10 to 100, and it will show me more companies. 522 companies have increased their marketing headcount by more than 25%, right? In this size companies. So they've increased their marketing department by more than 25%, and they've got at least 10 people in the department. So in other words, they've either grown by 2 marketing people or potentially anywhere up to 20 people have been added into their marketing department. And they're still hiring, and they've grown more than 5% in the last year. Now, if I wanted to be a bit more picky, And when actually they're really rocking it, let's go a bit more ambitious, 15%. So they've had a 15% growth in headcount in the last year. They're still hiring. 374 companies are in that space. 374 companies are hiring on LinkedIn, have a high headcount, still hiring, and have increased the marketing department. That's an opportunity. That's white space. It's companies that are defying the odds, they're growing, and there's potential for growth. So it's not just, oh, I work with companies at this size, in this sectors. This is in the tech sector, by the way. This is in technology. So let's just knock these out and let's see what the world looks like. 2,000 companies meeting that criteria across the planet. 2,000 companies just in those parameters. I can extend those parameters, change those parameters. It is totally up to you, but this is the power of Sales Navigator. This is the power of Sales Navigator. It's not just about looking up a directory and seeing who I can find. It's about finding, this is my market. Where's the most lucrative business in that market? Where's the most opportunity for success, growth, and long-term business? Versus, this is my market, I'm just going to go for it. So be smart, be intelligent, be wise. Use that home feed. Now we come to, okay, what are we going to do with this home feed? How are we going to leverage it? How do we engage these prospects? This is really simple, really straightforward. If you go for a full frontal assault on a prospect, you email them, you message them, you call them, the success rate of the response to that is 0.6%. So if you go in all guns blazing at a prospect and say, here it is, bang, 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 0.6%. Because it takes roughly 8 touch points to get a conversation and a meeting. Now the classic approach is, I'm going to send you an email, I'm going to follow up, I'm going to circle back, I'm going to do all of that stuff. No, what you should be doing is thinking about your whole tool set. I've got phone, I've got LinkedIn, I've got email. How do I join them up? So I'll give you some simple tips. We'll go through this in full detail on the masterclass. And again, I'll put the link in the chat if you want to come and join me live on Zoom, where you can ask more questions. We can go through your examples. We can do some prospecting in real time and get conversations going in real time. So do check that out. And if you're really up for this, if you're really up for filling your pipeline from LinkedIn, sign up. So what do we do to warm these prospects up? How do we get them to engage with us? What's the next thing we do? So I said earlier, it's about being organized. It's about really understanding that I can't just run to the platform, go crazy, check out and never come back. I have to have a plan. And we've got a little worksheet, activity sheet you can have. Drop us an email. Email's on screen, hi@maverick.io. You send me an email, drop me an email, I'll send you the activity sheet. So that's really important. If you want to nail it, you want to do that. So there has to be a plan, not just for your activity, but for every prospect. How do I create those touch points without just doing the classic pitch, follow-up pitch, check in? Have I offended you? Are you alive? Shall I send you a funky gif of a cup with your name on and go, what are we going to do? So here's my suggestion. Break your prospecting activity into 3 stages. Stage 1 is engagement. Stage 2 is outreach. And stage 3 is follow-up. So the engage stage is to basically build a bit of familiarity, build a bit of trust, get some responsivity. The outreach phase is to get the meeting, and then the follow-up stage is to nurture it so it doesn't die a death, because that's what typically happens. People have a call with somebody, there's kind of, they're not sure where they are interested, they might get a proposal out, they might not get a proposal, there might be a second meeting you want to do, you've got to keep them alive. So there's the engagement stage. Is the first thing you've got to do is get the prospect to actually respond to you. So I share lots of value, I engage on their content. I will message them and share things that might be useful for them just to get the responsivity going, get myself in their world. They might see my content, they might learn a bit more about it, they might come to one of these webinars. I'm doing all of this engagement. So if you're a salesperson, it's about getting connected and building some bridges. It's not about pitches. It's building rapport and trust and awareness and some response. In the old world, they used to say, when you do cold email, and it's still true to this day, when you do cold email, the first job of any email, first job is to get a reply. Get a reply. That's the first job. Most people now write to their emails to pitch. They forget they're trying to get a reply. So the first part of the engagement is to get some response, some feedback, even if it's just a discussion about a blog. Build those bridges. The middle phase is actually outreach with something meaningful. Do some research. Talk to them about maybe some of the challenges they may be facing. Ask them questions. The idea being is to move them on to a call where they can learn. You cannot pitch on LinkedIn. Well, you can. It's just really ineffective because what you're trying to do is pitch in a way that you hope the other person will, first of all, get what you mean. Second of all, that will mean something for them in terms of value because you have no idea at this point, you're just guessing. So we want to try and avoid going down that rabbit hole of a pitch where it says we could do this for you, this for you, this for you, and actually have more of an open conversation. Is this a real challenge for you? Would it be worth a conversation? This is what we're doing with some people to get to the call. And that's where you can really explore and show them, or as I say, make the ask. After you've done that discovery call, at the end of this discovery call, you can do the ask. In other words, the pitch. Now, off that call, some people will go, oh, yeah, this sounds interesting. I can't touch it now. Maybe we could look at this again in a couple of months. Or, yeah, send me something. I'll talk to a couple of people and I'll come back to you. This is very common. We get these, there's kind of a little bit of interest, but it's not enough to kind of get them, you know, they're not getting hyper excited and jumping up and down. There's a little bit of interest, but you know that it could go off the boil. And this is typical of lots of conversations, lots of sales opportunities. They can go off the boil. So if they say to you, oh, come back to me in a couple of weeks. I need to talk to sort some other things out. Come back to me in a couple of weeks. What most people will do, there's two types of people. The salespeople will go, yeah, I know. If I leave you alone, let's be honest, if I leave you alone, you'll go off the boil. But at the same time, you've told me to kind of leave you alone. This is where LinkedIn can come back into play to engage them and keep the conversation going, even if they're not, you know, how's my pitch doing? How are you doing with this? It's just relational. Keep it going there so it doesn't die. They don't forget you. And then you come back in 2 weeks' time and they find out they've gone with somebody else. Or 2 weeks' time and they go, oh, we've shelved it. Or I've not even discussed it with the person. You can stay in their world. If they say, actually, we're not going to touch this till next year, you can build a plan of activity to not to check in with them, but to keep in their world so that you can follow up. Big problem is if people say, come back to me in 3 months' time, we know that it will be like that first conversation never happened. That's how you stay in people's world. Keep engaging, keep interacting, doing all of that fun stuff, because that's going to move the needle for you down the road. So we have engage, get the meeting, outreach, and then the follow-up. And this is where Sales Nav is very useful, because if they're engaged on LinkedIn, you can do a lot more low-key touch points through the whole process. Even if your outreach is by phone, even if your outreach is by email, you can do a lot more to engage the prospect if you've connected with them first. So if you start your process on LinkedIn, even if you move off LinkedIn to email or to phone, you're going to have a way more successful outcome because you've got other touch points. But if you try and do it the other way around and you've pestered somebody by email and they're ignoring you, and you try and connect with them on LinkedIn, they go, that's that annoying person who won't leave me alone on email. Build the relationships on LinkedIn. And I said this a few weeks ago. I was on a panel at LinkedIn, an event hosted by LinkedIn. And I said, if you realize that using LinkedIn can actually transform your email outreach, it will blow you away. And people are looking at me going, how can LinkedIn improve your email outreach? Well, anybody who's involved with email outreach will know subject lines, timing matter. It's like a thing. It's like a science. What should I put in the subject line? What time should I send the email? It's like a science. And you've got salespeople scrambling, trying to work this out. What's the time? How do I do it? What's the catch that I have to do it? If you've engaged with people on LinkedIn, if you've interacted, build up some engagement, build up some responsivity between you, when you send that outreach email, the name is familiar. Your name is familiar in the inbox. They go, Dean Seddon, I recognise that name from somewhere. I recognise that name. I'll open the email. So what most people don't get is if you use LinkedIn as an engagement tool, prospect engagement tool, not a database, an engagement tool, to build up that responsivity. Even if you go to email, even if you go to phone, they will have built up a bit of recognition, a bit of familiarity around who you are, your name. And it will be just enough to get people to go, as they scan through their inbox like you do and like I do, looking at the names to see who's important, they'll go, Dean Seddon, open. That in itself is massive, because most people, I know there's all these people who say, oh yeah, I get 35% open rate on my cold email. Most of the people who tell you they get 35% open rate on their cold email sell cold email. But if you engage with people on LinkedIn first to build up that responsivity, and I don't mean connect and then email them the next day, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being really smart with how you engage prospects. But if you do that, 3 times improvement in responsivity wherever you go next. So if you can do that engagement process, you get 3 times the results if you come out of that into email, phone, or stay on LinkedIn. 3 times the results when you put the effort in. But that's the key, putting the effort in, being organized, saving those people, tracking their progress, and deliberately choosing a cadence to engage. Engage before outreach. Way more effective. And of course, once you've had that discovery call, once you've had that meeting, keeping the engagement going so it doesn't die. It doesn't drop off a cliff. They don't go to ground and you never see them again, because you've left them. You've honored what they've said. They've said, give me a couple of weeks. But then when you go back and say, it's been a couple of weeks, guess what? You get no response. Engage, 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 and understand the best opportunities for your business. So I'm running out of time rapidly. So some quick things about engagement. It's liking, it's commenting, it's sharing value in the DMs, it's having conversations about things that they're interested in, that they've maybe engaged with, they've commented on. Anything to build up that relationship rapport. It can be very relational and personal if there's stuff going on that's obvious in the public domain. It could be very relevant information, blogs and articles and white papers and insight pieces and things like that. It can be a mix of all of that, but it's creating those touch points that are not just sales pitches or chase ups or follow ups or circle backs. And you do that, move to the outreach, and then your outreach doesn't have to do as much. We haven't even talked about the profile loop today and how you can mass educate your prospects without ever saying what you do. We'll cover that in the masterclass. But this is the key. There's the engagement phase, there's the outreach phase, and the follow-up phase. And if you work the system and join up your email, your phone, and your LinkedIn together with Sales Navigator, Sales Navigator is brilliant at keeping prospects engaged and basically opening the door for the email and the phone to be way more effective, and the DMs, of course. But it will make those others way more effective. So I'm running out of time. Final little plug. If you want to come to the Sales Nav Masterclass, it's the 6th of July. If you're serious about winning business on LinkedIn and taking it to a whole other level, you want to book yourself in. I'll put the details in the comments. Well, one of the team will. But Sales Navigator, amazing tool for your business. You should not miss out on it. It will change the game for you if you use it as part of a strategic prospecting process. So thank you so much for joining me today. We'll be back with Build Your Personal Brand in a week's time. So if you're looking to build that brand, really elevate your authority, sell more off the back of your expertise and thought leadership and all that stuff, book yourself in. It's free. We'll give you some resources. Oh, forgot. If you want our activity plan for prospecting on LinkedIn, drop us an email, hi@maverick.io. We'll send you the activity sheet, but it may be tomorrow, but we'll send you the activity sheet that'll help you get started, start prospecting and being more strategic in your outreach and how you engage your prospects. So thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.
Dean's strategy helped me find clients. I created clients for my business with this program. It works.
My connections have grown, my reach has grown, my views have grown, and actually so has my business revenue. Over that 3-month period, I have actually signed up 3 new clients at a cost of £50,000. That's over just a 3-month period. So it's worth it.
Every single time there's a session, I just feel like it's just a golden moment. Every single session brings me something really new and really valuable, and I've started to attract high value client sales, which is wonderful, and it's really given our business a boost.
Dean Seddon and the Maverick team, what can I say? Apart from absolutely awesome.
The results have been amazing. We have had loads of incoming leads coming into our lead funnels and workflow processes on our website. And we've also built a really successful community around the content that we produce and push out into our LinkedIn channels. My team has also learned a lot from working with the team at Maverick, and they've also helped us really create fantastic events on LinkedIn.
I'm much more confident, and all of that, without a shadow of doubt, is down to the work and the training and support I've had from Dean and the rest of his team as part of the Accelerator course.
In terms of the training, Maverick have been absolutely fantastic. They've been so supportive. They've talked me through all the stages of what you have to do, why you have to do it, the benefits of doing it the way they tell us to do it. And I've gone from being with no social media to being actually addicted, because I can see what this can do for lead generation, generating new business. It's just been incredible, and Maverick have been superb throughout the whole process.
The guys at Maverick, they've been great. Dean and his team, very knowledgeable, wealth of experience, and we've had quite a few one-to-ones now that really taught us the depths, the nooks and crannies of LinkedIn, which none of us would have known before, and I think we can continue to use that going forward, and it's been great so far, and I hope to continue to use it as well.